market? That makes complete sense to me. Good answer.
Well, I mean, hydroponic marijuana can be grown anywhere. It doesn't have to be in Australia. And I have actually heard that the Sumatran marijuana, which I believe is available in Indonesia, actually leaves the hydroponic marijuana in the shade for strength and quality of smoke.
There you go. So, okay, we've got through that one. So I'm just going to be a little bit of the devil's advocate because I've been asking people what they think, trying to get a feel for this. And these are some of the questions that seem to be very strong in people's minds.
No, that's extremely important. But obviously, that's one piece of, I guess, exculpatory, evidence. But of course, that in itself isn't enough to prove guilt or innocence. It's just, it's another piece of evidence which is important. But can we move to other more substantive issues here that indicate, at the very least, a miscarriage of justice? I mean, I've heard about, for example, the problem with there's no security camera footage, and there's a problem with the fact that the bags were never weighed. Maybe you could just move into those points for us.
Yes, certainly. Well, there is no CCTV footage available from all the airports that Schapelle passed through on her trip from Brisbane to Bali. There was supposedly CCTV footage available at Brisbane Airport, but once the Corby started trying to get hold of that, they received any number of different stories about the fate of the footage. Eventually, the footage was never supplied. And the final word that they were given was that the cameras were not actually switched on. Similarly, in Sydney Airport, there was no CCTV footage available there from the baggage handling area. I believe that all the cameras were actually found to be facing the wall that day, and that's also very significant because on that very day that Schapelle's bag passed through Sydney domestic and Sydney international airports, there was an operation known as Operation Mocha in progress at the airport, which is basically it was an AFP operation attempting to catch baggage handlers using unsuspecting travellers' bags for the importation of cocaine. It seemed rather strange that if that operation was occurring that day, that the cameras would not have been working in Sydney International Airport or Sydney Domestic.
So, Roy, this must have all, this Schapelle Corby incident, correct me if I'm wrong, it must have happened before September 11 because the security's been through the roof since then.
Well, that's exactly right.
But it didn't, did it? It was 2002.
It was 2005, or 2004, wasn't it?
Sorry, there you go.
Sorry, let's get the date right. I think, was it, could you just clarify the date for us, Roy?
The date that Schapelle travelled was the 8th of October 2004.
2004, great.
And on that day, a major cocaine shipment did come into Sydney Airport, and I understand that baggage handlers were arrested sometime after that. There were AFP officers in the airport on that day conducting, Operation Mocha, which I'm sure you've heard about. It seems unlikely that they would have accepted CCTV cameras being unavailable or switched off or broken down when they're conducting a major operation to try and catch baggage handlers bringing cocaine into the country.
Oh, mate, I just know, when I'm, supervising at work, I've got access to stacks of camera footage just from an engineering point of view. It's absolutely astounding, and that's why I was making that light point about the fact that it must have been before September 11, because the surveillance in the airports, especially the international airport, is, but if there's misconduct in the workplace, at any stage, they can pull up a footage of anyone, anywhere, at any time. Basically, the only place they can't get access to is our locker rooms, etc. Pretty much everywhere else is covered.
Okay. Well, just moving on. So the footage wasn't available from Sydney Airport, and did she also request the footage from Bali Denpasar Airport?
Yes, she did. There was her lawyers did ascertain that there was a camera directly above the customs counter where her bag was presented and opened in front of the customs officer. Obviously, there was a bit of a conflict in the testimony given by Schapelle and the customs officer. She requested, her and her defence lawyers requested that footage be made available in court to prove that she was telling the truth and the customs officer was lying. The judge initially said he would look into it. He later said, we'll get it if we need to. And in the end, he never found the need. It is significant that had the camera footage had the camera footage have proved that Schapelle was lying, it was hardly likely that she would ask for that to be presented in evidence. You would have thought it would have been more the prosecution asking for it to prove that their customs officer was telling the truth.
Indeed. So there was another piece of evidence which wasn't available to her to, I guess, because there was an argument, I guess, that was made that she was argumentative or that she was not agreeing with the search. And if she'd been able to show the footage, that would have refuted that argument that she didn't. Because I think from what I remember reading, she said she cooperated with the search, and they said that she tried to stop them from searching or something like that. Is that correct?
Well, that's what the customs officer claimed. Chappelle testified that she willingly opened the bag in front of the customs officer before he'd even asked her to do so. You see, her brother had actually taken the boogie board bag to the counter. One of the reasons for that is that Chappelle was struggling with her baggage. She had a fair bit, and one of her friends said to James, "Look, help your sister with her bags," and he dragged the boogie board bag to the counter. The reason he had to drag it, of course, was because the main carry handle on the bag had been cut. And when he got to the counter, the customs officer, Gusti Wanato, whose command of English was pretty poor, in fact so poor that he used a translator in court, asked James if the bag was his. But before he could answer, Chappelle said, no, it's mine, picked it up and put it on the counter, noticed that the zips had been tampered with, but didn't really think too much about it at the time, and then willingly opened the bag for inspection, expecting there just to be a boogie board bag and a pair of flippers in the bag.
Okay, and
Roy, just a question on that thought, because I heard a rumour myself, and I had it confirmed today by a few people that there was a rumour that the bag was actually on the carousel going around by itself, and no one was coming to get it. And it was quite strange that Chappelle didn't pick up a bag that was the last one on the carousel. Is that true?
Look, I can't really say if that's true or not.
Okay, but I heard that today, but I haven't seen any evidence of it.
No.
Okay, so that's hearsay.
Okay, so you get just more hearsay. There's plenty of hearsay, but not much evidence.
But what we do know is that when the bag was opened, there was a big. Was it shrink wrapped? Was it like a hard brick? Was it the way they sort of packaged?
Basically, it was a vacuum sealed bag,
right?
And it was compressed to a degree. Yes.
Okay, so it was was it a kilo or?
Well, there was 4.2 kilos of marijuana in the bag, but it was partially compressed but due to the vacuum seal. There was actually two bags, one within the other. The inner bag had actually been slashed right across the side for reasons unknown, but one can only assume that it may have been to help the smell of the marijuana escape. Because
I see.
Why would you do that yourself if you were trying to smuggle the stuff in?
So the inner bag had been slashed so that you could actually smell it. So it was actually
smell it. Yes.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. And so this bag full of 4.2 kilos of cannabis was just bouncing around inside the boogie board bag, partially cut open, and so the minute it was opened, that would have been quite a waft of smell then that came out of there. Was it?
Yes, it would have been. Yes.
Yeah, that would have been quite shocking. So and 4 kilos. I mean, that's quite a substantial weight. Now, from what I understand, Chappelle has tried to request weight measurements from Sydney and comparing it to Bali. Is that what happened?
Well, basically, I mean, all her baggage was weighed in Brisbane, but because they don't have individual bag weights, it was a collective weight of all her bags, including the boogie board bag. And she did have that weight available, and she did ask if the bags could all be weighed in Bali, and a weight comparison done. But the police decided that claimed that it was not necessary.
It's now changed now that they're individually weighed, and the system has changed to make sure this won't happen again, from what I've heard.
Okay, so the courts there just ruled that was sort of inadmissible and it wasn't relevant or whatever. They're just not interested in it. Not interested in knowing
the police weren't even interested in doing it. They said it wasn't necessary.
Okay, so that rules out that method of proving her innocence. What about fingerprints? What about fingerprints?
Well, yes, she did request fingerprinting of the outer bag, and later on the inner bag as well. Initially, the outer bag was handled by customs officers and police at the airport, none of whom were wearing gloves, thereby contaminating the outer bag with their fingerprints, rendering that basically impossible to fingerprint because too many people had handled that bag.
Okay.
Any evidence that would have obtained would have been inconclusive. The inner bag, however, was not actually touched initially. It was only in court when the inner bag was finally pulled out of the outer